Hi, my name is Abigail Conklin, and today I'm going to be talking to you about my research on the effect of urbanization on freshwater turtle populations. This is really interesting stuff that I'm very passionate about, so I hope that you enjoy my presentation. So before we can get into how urbanization might impact freshwater turtle populations, the first thing we need to discuss is temperature-dependent sex determination, which I'm going to call TSD for the remainder of this presentation. TSD is a method used by a lot of different reptiles, including many turtles, in which the sex of an individual is determined by the temperature at which the egg is incubated at. Now, there are actually three different patterns of TSD, and those three patterns are displayed along the bottom here. In case one, you have females at low temperatures and males at high temperatures. In case two, you have males at low temperatures and females at high temperatures. And then in case three, you have females at low temperatures, males at intermediate temperatures, and then females again at high temperatures. So of the relevant species for this study, eastern painted turtles and all sorts of sliders and cooters display TSD2, while musk turtles display TSD3. So how exactly does TSD relate to urbanization? Something you may have heard of before is the urban heat island effect. This is an effect where areas with high levels of impervious surfaces, such as concrete, have higher temperatures and retain more heat. They're just hotter on average. If you've ever stepped on a road in the middle of summer without shoes on, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It is hot. So this actually raises the soil temperature as well as the ambient temperature in the area. And soil temperatures have also just been rising over time due to climate change. You can see over on the left a graph from a location in London charting the soil temperatures over the last 60, 70 years, and you can see that it has the trend has been going up. Over on the right, you can see a map of Washington, D.C. In terms of the heat of the location and its surrounding area. You can just see how much hotter Washington, D.C. is with all of that concrete and all of those roads in comparison to surrounding areas where there's, more trees and less compact development. So if the temperature is warmer in urban areas, does that mean that there are going to be more female turtles in urban areas? If you remember what I said about TSD in the last slide, I would assume yes, and that's part of why I started this investigation. So the other factor that's going to impact the sex ratios of urban turtle populations is the risk of road mortality. This is an extremely high risk for all turtles. A study from 2005 calculated that as of 2001, a turtle had only a 2% chance of successfully making it across a 4-lane highway. I mean, if you've ever seen a turtle trying to cross a road, they don't go very fast, and traffic often goes a lot faster than they can make it across. The problem, part of the problem at least, is that, a turtle's main reaction to a threat is to hide in its shell, because, most things aren't going to be able to get through that nice hard shell. Unfortunately, that is not the case for cars. So turtles end up leaving themselves extremely vulnerable when trying to cross the road. Adult male turtles actually rarely leave their home ponds. The only reason for them to do so is for them to disperse to find a new location, or, for some species, seeking out females. But they don't have to go necessarily far to do that. They are mostly, in general, going to stay in the pond that they first found when they were born. Adult female turtles, however, must leave their home ponds at least once a year in order to find suitable nesting sites to lay their eggs. And these turtles can travel up to 2 miles in search of a good nesting site. And a lot of these turtles are actually producing more than one clutch of eggs per breeding season. So they'll, lay 2-3 clutches of eggs. That is 2-3 times per year that they have to successfully make it across multiple roads without getting hit by a car. So you can see how road mortality would be much more of a threat to females than males with that in mind. So my research, it seems that turtles face opposing pressures due to urbanization. Higher urban temperatures might add more females to the population, as you can see my prediction down on the bottom right-hand corner. I would expect for there to be more females in urban locations due to the high temperatures, but I would also expect the higher number of roads to be removing more females from urban populations, leading there to be more males. So it's sort of a balancing act. And I'm not really sure whether one feature or one of those effects outweighs the other. So that was part of why I conducted this study. With these two factors in mind, does urbanization have a noticeable impact on local turtle populations? So in order to investigate this, I sampled turtles from 5 locations with varying degrees of urbanization. From these 5 locations, I measured the carapace length, which is the shell length of the turtle. I recorded the mass, and I also recorded the sex of a turtle. So in order to catch these turtles, I had to set out hoop nets at each location. Hoop nets are often used in fishing, but they are great for trapping turtles. Turtles aren't necessarily very smart, as cute as they are, so they'll swim in through this little hole right here during their, daily movements across the pond, and then they won't be able to get out simply because they think that the way out should either be on the top or on the bottom, not in the middle. It's not 100%, of course. Turtles do get in and out of these traps, but I'll pull up a trap and I'll see, 10, 15 turtles sometimes. So it works well enough. You can see in the picture at the bottom, one of my traps after I pulled it with 2 very large, quite frankly, very unhappy snapping turtles. And it's a little harder to see, but there's a bunch of eastern painted turtles right back there behind the 2 big angry snappers. So you may be wondering at this point, how exactly do you sex a turtle? They all kind of look the same if you don't know what you're looking for. So it varies from species to species, and I'm going to walk you through the ways to sex the turtles of the different species that I used in my study. So for male sliders, cooters, and eastern painted turtles, these are basically just your typical basking turtles, the ones that you see on logs. They're going to have long claws and a cloaca past the rim of their carapace if they are males, and they're also going to be smaller in general than females. Turtle number 87 and 88 over here are a really great example. 88 is a female, 87 is a male. You can see how much longer that cloaca is on the male than the female, and the female is also, notably bigger than the male. The other thing to look for is the really long claws in these guys. You can see a very young red-eared slider here in the middle that is very clearly a male because it has extremely long nails. Compare those nails to over on the left-hand side, the female with the very, very short stubby claws. So not pictured here, but another species that I investigated in the study are musk turtles. Male musk turtles have a rough patch of skin behind their knee. It's pretty easy to sex them. You just kind of pull out their leg and feel around for a little patch of sandpapery skin. And then they also have a longer and thicker tail than females, so it makes them pretty easy to identify. So the locations that I sampled, I made maps within a 2-mile radius of each location that I pulled turtles from, so that I could get an idea of how much of the land was urbanized. I'm going to go through these relatively quickly because I have 5 of them, and frankly, y'all want to get to the results and the information and not spend that much time on the maps, I'm sure. So at this location, 61% of the land was developed at varying degrees of intensity. Basically, all of the pink and red over here is, urban areas where there's a lot of concrete. Heron Pond was my second most urban area. 46% of the land here was developed, but it's, less intensely developed. You can see there's a lot less of that red and dark red and a lot more of the pink. Able Lake is the 3rd most urban area, but there's a huge drop off there from 46% to 17% of the land being developed here. And pretty much any area directly surrounding the lake is pretty rural. Ruffin's Pond is very similar in terms of percentage of the land developed to Able Lake, only 16%. of the land is developed. However, it's a lot closer to the area that I sampled. And in fact, there's a highway that bisects the pond. The least urban and most rural location that I sampled was Crow's Nest, where only about 6% of the land was developed. So this is a really great place for turtles to be. There's not much risk of road mortality here. They're not going to be feeling that urban heat effect nearly as much. So this is the kind of location where I'm expecting to see a lot more old, large females because they're not getting hit by cars as frequently, and a more even sex ratio of males to females because the number of females isn't getting pushed up by urban heating effect. So here's just the raw data in terms of the numbers of individuals that I captured. This is mostly if anybody wants to pause and look at how many turtles I caught from each location, that's here. So to get into the more important results, adult sex ratios. So the sex ratios by location within species were very similar. There's no notable differences between them. You can see that in pretty much every scenario, there are more males than females. And this would be interesting, except for the fact that it's all locations, not just one or two. So there's something going on here, but it's going on uniformly. It's not tied to urbanization. It's just what the turtles are dealing with for whatever reason. So moving on to the results in terms of length of turtles, this is just, it's because it's something I measured, it's interesting to look at the size differences between turtles. Over on the left, you can see that the eastern painted turtles, there is a huge difference between the size of females and males. That's not anything new, that's well-known, well-reported information. And you can see that there's just a little bit of a difference between the locations in terms of length, but it's not enough to be significant. In terms of musk turtles and their lengths, it's kind of all over the place. It's pretty interesting. There's seems to be a very big difference based on location for the size of musk turtles. I have really, really small musk turtles from Ruffin's Pond and really, really big ones from Able Lake, both locations of which I got a substantial number of musk turtles, Ruffin's Pond especially. And in addition to that, the trend lines are, crisscrossing each other a little bit. So it's interesting stuff. But the actual calculations tell me that there is no significant difference based on the sex for musk turtles, while there is a difference based on location. However, there is no location by sex difference. So that's, the difference between the sex difference. The difference in size is not different by location. And then for the eastern painted turtles up on the top, it appears that there is a significant difference in terms of both location and sex, which is interesting. However, the location by sex, again, there doesn't seem to be an interaction between those two factors, which is what I was primarily interested in. So, the factors are different on their own, but they don't have an effect on each other. So with that in mind, I decided to try calculating the breeding seasons survived by each turtle. So I figured that estimating the minimum breeding seasons survived by each individual would be a good way to compare the survival of breeding adults across multiple locations. Because turtles, they stop growing at a certain point, but they're still going to be surviving, breeding seasons. And if road mortality is impacting this population, I should be seeing less old breeding females at urban locations. So the way that I did this was I estimated these breeding seasons via a von Bertalanffy curve. You can see those at the bottom, using species and sex-specific K values from other papers on turtles. These curves look, very perfect because I calculated one of the values from the other value. Usually with a von Bertalanffy curve, you're going to calculate the carapace length or the length in general from a known age. I did the opposite. I used a known carapace length to calculate to make an estimate about the age. And I capped age at 25 years old because past that point, there would be a large range of error in terms of turtle sizes and age, because a 64 millimeter a 164 millimeter female and a 66 millimeter female eastern painted turtle, in reality, it might just be that they had a little bit of different growing seasons. They might not be that far apart in age, but this graph would put them, like 10 years apart, which obviously isn't accurate. So I decided to cap the age at 25 years. So the results for breeding season survived, as you can see here. Eastern painted turtles over on the left, they're all very uniform. The females are surviving less breeding seasons than the males are. That's nothing new, that's not surprising. Females take longer to mature than males. They mature at about 8 years old, whereas males are maturing around 4 years old. So that's not surprising that the females have less breeding seasons than the males. If you combine that with the potential risk of road mortality at any location, it's, again, no great surprise that females are, on average, having less breeding seasons than the males do. Musk turtles, however, are a little bit more interesting. There's a lot of difference based on location, and the trend lines are even going in different directions, or at least for one of the locations they are. In general, it seems that the females have longer or have survived more breeding seasons than the males, which is mostly a flaw of the equation. Females are the smaller species, or the smaller sex in musk turtles. Males are the larger ones, even though males mature earlier, simply because the females grow more slowly. The curves, the von Bertley curve places females as having more breeding seasons if they're large, just because it assumes that they must have been growing for a lot longer than a large male. However, you can see that even with the different growth rates consistent at these different locations, males and females are experiencing very different average breeding seasons. Ruffin's Pond is perhaps the most interesting of these results, because this is the only place where the males are surviving, have an estimated mean breeding season that is higher than that of the females. And I think that this is potentially because Ruffin's Pond is bisected by a highway. As I said earlier, turtles can travel up to 2 miles in order to find a nest, but they frequently will nest closer to their ponds than that. And any area near a highway is going to be sandy, open dirt. That is prime nesting location for a turtle, or so the turtle thinks. So I am not surprised that the turtles at Ruffin's Pond have a lower survival rate than the males do. Now, in terms of the actual numbers, the significance of location for eastern painted turtles is non-existent. There's no correlation between location and breeding seasons survived. There is a correlation between sex and breeding seasons survived, but again, that's not surprising, as I explained on the previous slide. And there is no interaction between location and sex in terms of significance. For musk turtles, there is a location-based difference, but it applies to both males and females. It's not just something that's affecting the males or just something that's affecting the females. And as of such, the location by sex interaction is pretty much non-existent. It's a flip of the coin. As you can see, it's a 0.5. And in terms of just sex in and of itself, there is not very much difference between the males and females in terms of the breeding seasons survived, and what difference exists is not significant. So the conclusions that I came to are that there are no significant differences based on location for eastern painted turtles, and no significant differences based on sex for musk turtles. Ruffin's Pond displays the opposite trend to the other locations, but this location is also the only place bisected by a road. So the low number of breeding seasons survived by females from Ruffin's Pond may be correlated to that. Overall, my results show no correlation between urbanization and sex ratio. This is something that has been noted in a few other studies. I'm personally not willing to give up just yet. I think that there is potentially something there, but due to some, sampling error and the fact that I'm just one person, I was not able to get, very broad results. I'd like to take a moment to thank Dr. Lamphere for his assistance on this project. I would not have been able to do it without him. I would also like to thank UMW Biology Department for the funding that they provided me. And I would like to thank Mike Lott from Crow's Nest and my fellow UMW student Edward Shanahan for help with sampling at a couple of my locations. And here are my works cited. Feel free to contact me if you are interested in looking into any of these resources. And thank you so much for your time. Thank you for listening to my presentation. I really hope you enjoyed it.